Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the July STP, the STP quarterly STP meeting. I got some notes that I guess I can share from the director's seat. Um, First thing is KTC, which is our research partners over at University of Kentucky. Uh, they recently completed a report on KYTC's context classification network. Um, so the context classification network it's important for us because uh, it classifies roadways based on the surrounding environment and user types to offer a more comprehensive and multimodal perspective than the traditional functional classification. So it's going to improve guidance, enhance project prioritization, and also supports the development of projects uh, for to better address the needs of all users. So KTC, the researchers with assistance from our staff, created this GIS-based model to build a context classification network to cover all state maintained roadways and locally maintained roadways with a functional classification of arterial or collector. Um, I will say that after KYTC reviewed the initial context classification, the full context classification network was updated based on your all's feedback. And I'd like to thank the district planners played an integral part of this. They reviewed the network that KTC provided to them, and also a special shout out to Catherine Davis, who assisted with District 1 because of the vacancy out there for the D1 planning supervisor. Um, so it's important to note that the cabinet should regularly update this network to account for any types of land use changes, redrawn urban area boundaries, and modified functional classifications. So this is something that we just completed, but it's not something that's gonna never be updated again. It'll be updated on a regular schedule based upon those land use changes and whatnot. But it's important because this context classification network has many applications for not only for planning but for design, for safety, operations, and maintenance. So I'm going to share that document with the staff, with the transportation planning partners. I'll get it out here once I get done speaking, but I want to make sure that that report is something that y'all have access to if needed. Um, I'm going to share my
See, Mikhail, on that,
screen. Oh,
we'll have the network itself, the map. Ramsey's getting it, or has it loaded in his network. We're working with the GIS staff to actually have the public map available, both as a layer file that can be loaded into the normal maps and as a standalone map. That should be done next week, that we can also send out.
okay. Well, I might just thank you, Stephen. Thank you to it. I might just wait and hold off on sending that until everything's together. That way, I won't bombard anybody with emails, and we'll have it all together at once. But yeah, DeWitt was important in that study, and also I'd like to thank Beth Neiman, who formerly of District 5 and formerly of Central Office Planning, who was the SAC chair for us and the benefit with KTC. The new planning work program. I think I've mentioned this before, but this is available on our website. So if you see there at the top, it not only has our work program, which we'll be completing for this fiscal year, but if you scroll down the website, you can see all of them that we've done, dating all the way back to looks like 2003. But if you're interested in what our tasks will be for the year, it's going to be the one at the very top, the planning work program. You can just click on it, and it's about a 70-page document which outlines everything that the Division of Planning will be doing over this next fiscal year. So, if you're ever interested in what in what we are doing as a whole, it's also got our budget and our breakdown of budget in there as well. But all our responsibilities and our activities for the next fiscal year are outlined there, the work program, and that's available online. You can just Google KYTC SPR planning work program. It'll take you right to the site. It's also available on the right side of our planning website, our planning website under work program. The Division of Program Management is completing the STIP. So the draft review will be available for 30 days, 30-day comment period of the draft review. The STIP is anticipated to start at the beginning of next month on August the 1st. Hard copies will be sent to each district. That is something that follows the highway plan. So that'll be available for comments on August the 1st for 30 days. Some exciting news for us in Kentucky, which was announced last week. We had a couple of bill grant wins, which were huge for the state of Kentucky. $25 million going to truck parking locations at 7 locations throughout the state. So these locations, I-71 north and southbound at mile point 13 in Oldham County, I-75 north and southbound mile points 177 in Boone County, I-64 east and westbound mile points 60 in Woodford County, and I-65 southbound mile point 113 in Bullitt County. Huge wins for the state of Kentucky. I think everybody on this call is aware of the importance of truck parking and traveling through interstates and traveling through facilities through the state. You see trucks parked on the shoulder. This is an important mechanism for us to improve safety. So we're going to be adding with these seven locations. We're going to be adding 387 spots at those locations. And currently we only have 201. So we're basically almost going to triple our capacity at those 7 locations, which is huge. That encompassed an overall, I think nationwide, there was $62 million awarded in truck parking funding. And Kentucky got 25 million of that. So almost half state of Kentucky, which is a great win for the state. We also had another bill grant win, $24 million for the Paducah and McCracken County Riverport Authority. So that'll expand the capacity at the main public ports in Paducah at the confluence of the Ohio and the Tennessee rivers. That's a major hub for companies that tow barges on inland waterways. And the Riverport West is adjacent to that triple rail site, and it's marketed by years for economic development leaders for its connections to 3 separate rail lines. So those are 2 huge wins in terms of bill grants. Beth Neiman again, and Susan Oatman and Jeremy Edgeworth from my shop are all instrumental in preparing some of the documents to be able to win those grants for the state, for the Commonwealth. And the last thing I wanted to give a shout out, we've got a couple of retirees. I know Nick Hall has been talking about retiring for a couple of years, but I know the time has finally come for Nick. He's going to be retiring at the end of this month on July 31st will be his last day. He's the District 2 planning supervisor. So Nick, congratulations. I don't know what you plan on doing with all your time off, but it's been a pleasure working with you the last 15 years since I've been in Division of Planning. And also, I saw Arthur Box. He was on here earlier from my office, the Central Office Division of Planning. He is retiring at the end of the month as well. He is on our data management branch, works with the planning supervisors to be able to update our data needs. And I think he's got districts 3, 4, 10, and 11. But Arthur is also retiring at the end of the month, so I wanted to recognize him and recognize his efforts as well, and many years of service to the Commonwealth of Kentucky and also the Division of Planning. And that's all I think that's all I've got, Nathan. Does anybody have any questions before I turn back to Nathan?
I have a question, but I'm going to save it for Jeremy at the end of the related to your build grants. So,
Okay.
but that being said, we'll turn over to our next speaker, Mr. Jason Sawala. He's the executive director of project development, KYTC. Jason, do you want me to do the full gamut bio, or do you want me to just
No,
give
I
you
don't
the
mind.
short?
I don't mind. I don't mind to introduce myself. So,
Okay, all right. I'm just going to turn it over to you, sir, and then let you go.
all right. Good morning. As Nathan said, Jason Sawala, Deputy State Highway Engineer for Project Development here at KYTC, and thank you, Nathan and Mikhail, for inviting me here to talk about the highway plan. I'm going to kind of cover a few different things, and I'll just ask as we're getting moving here. I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to kind of take a guided tour of the narrative of the highway plan. So I hope you've had an opportunity to look at the highway plan and review projects and things like that, which are most of the things that folks like to take a look at. But we're going to look at kind of some of the background there and talk about implementation of the highway plan a little bit. But I don't want to get started without formally thanking everybody in this audience in particular for their contributions through the shift process and numerous other things that happen as we're looking at developing a recommended highway plan for the contributions that they have made to our, to our successful implementation of getting through that highway plan process. It's absolutely critical that we continue to have the best and most up-to-date information possible from out there in all over the state, from the ad areas and the MPO areas and the highway district offices, because 2 years is a long time and things change quickly here in Kentucky. And so it's really important that, we are not only doing the mechanical pieces of scoring the projects and those types of things, but that we're having that open dialogue about our communities and what their needs are and how, the things that happen within the highway plan best fit within within those communities, and how all of that works together to improve quality of life and deliver economic opportunity here in Kentucky. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody in the audience for all of your contributions to that process. So, Mikhail, can you see my screen here showing the introduction from the enacted plan?
Yes, sir. We see
All right.
it.
Just wanted to make sure. Don't want to be talking to folks, and so referencing things if they couldn't see them. And so, as we look, in odd number years to produce a recommended highway plan, which ultimately, informs and is modified by the General Assembly to get to the final enacted plan, which this year was enacted on and signed into law on April 13th. As we're doing that, there's a lot of different things that go into the highway plan. And so this graphic here kind of shows that, and it shows things about what's going on in the asset management world. It's really important to take care of all of the things that we've built over the previous generations so that they continue to be contributing to the success of Kentuckians and how they travel safely from one place to another. Looking at that, we have the shift process. We have the previous projects that were in previous highway plans, and we have the vision of the cabinet and all of our partners to look at as well. And so as we look at that, the 2026 highway plan as a whole has projects and phases in it totaling about 9.8, totaling $29.5 billion. And over that 6-year period, we anticipate about $9.8 billion in anticipated revenues. And so, one of the things to remember is that as we continue to look at here in Kentucky and across the nation and across the world, identified needs continue to outpace available revenues, and that's not something that's new to what we're doing here in Kentucky, but it is a reality that we need to address and just understand. So, in the plan over the 6 years, we have 1,600 projects that have more than 4,300 phases through from 2027 to 2032. And so, about 2 weeks ago, we started the fiscal year 2027. That's hard to believe because you think about how long some of us have been in the industry, and it seems like maybe not a lot of time until you start looking at those years getting up into the 2030s, and it's amazing how quickly time goes. And so, as Mikhail mentioned earlier with the STIP, we did provide hard copies of the highway plan to the district offices and things. And if you were to need one as one of our partners, we can probably figure out how to do that for you as well. If you want to make a request to the Division of Planning, we could probably get a couple of hard copies if you needed. But the one that I'm going through here today is the one that's available online. I'll drop the link in the chat when I'm done if somebody doesn't do it in the interim. And it's really easy to use that to kind of go through and look at various different things. And so when you look at that highway plan, the very first thing in it is a cover letter from Secretary Goodman, and it kind of lays out a very succinct summary, if you will, of what's in the narrative. But it talks about what's going on with the plan and some of our thoughts on how it will be implemented. And outlined also within the narrative, it talks about each of the 5 sections, which we'll cover in a second. It covers the 3 mega projects that we're currently working on across the state. And it also includes a historical tabulation of construction awards since 1990. And I think that that's important to think about just from the perspective of everything that we're looking at doing as a future need is built on what it was that we've already accomplished. And so as we're looking at the highway plan, the first thing that I'll call your attention to in the narrative is this page right here, which is kind of our 1-page graphic for our KYTC strategic plan. And it helps to look at this portion of the document just to kind of understand the underlying vision, mission, goals, strategies, tactics, all of those types of things, and most important, what KYTC values. And so here on the screen here, we do have that graphic, and I'll make mention here that at KYTC, we value safety first. We value delivering results. We value each team member and partner. We value the golden rule, and we value all voices. And so as we were talking just a moment ago about the shift process and how important it is to have those conversations at the local level, at the regional level, and ultimately at the state level, that's because we value everybody's input into what it is that ultimately ends up happening here. And so as we look at the highway plan here, we do have 5 sections. Okay, and so we have the first section is asset management program. And as I mentioned before, we have a lot of different things that we've built. And if you think about your length of time in this industry, whether it's 5 years or 50 years or anywhere in between, you've seen a lot of change likely in Kentucky and in the infrastructure and in our transportation network over that time period. And so asset management and performance of those assets is something that's really important as we're moving into our future, because all of those investments that we've made, and KYTC's transportation infrastructure is valued at more than $50 billion today. All of those investments don't get their full use or their full value without taking care of them and maintaining them. So it's really important that we do that. So that's a whole section of the highway plan unto itself. The next portion of the plan is a short section that explains the two general fund programs. So in the 2024 plan, there were funds made available for a program called the High Growth Counties, or HGC program. And there were funds allocated in the 2026 session, and for the 2026 plan for a program called the CRP program, or the Construction Ready Projects program. And so we'll talk about that in a little bit. Section C is the system improvement section, and those are things that folks typically think about when they think about the highway plan. Things that are aimed at improving safe mobility for all users across the entire network. Section D, Freudian slip there, is the Z various funding, and those are predominantly items that we need to do that are programmatic in nature, that are not able to be identified and enumerated within the highway plan. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. And then E is the County Priority Projects program, and so this is folks might have heard the acronym LARP, L-A-R-P. It's the Local Assistance Road Program. And in this session, the General Assembly put quite a few more funds into that than they had at any time in the previous part. So we're going to just kind of go through and look at this. And I gave you a bad number. I said over 50 billion, which is true, but 96 billion in net value of those assets today. So in asset management, you think about 9,000 bridges. Now, 9,000 bridges may not sound like a lot, but that's just structures that are 20 feet or greater. So there's a lot of different structures that aren't included in that number, but that's a lot of structures to not only maintain, but inspect, load rate, and all of those different things. And so as you look at this portion of the narrative, just a couple things that I wanted to point out is that, our goal for the asset management program is to maintain assets in a state of good repair. Okay. And so at its base level, we talk about assets being either good, fair, or poor. And so you see here that Kentucky's bridges are 75% either fair or poor. And, that means that as we're trying to maintain a state of good repair, that we are working hard on the bridge asset portion so that we can improve the overall system performance of those bridges. And 58% of pavements are in fair or poor condition. And what that really says at a macro level is that we need to continue to invest in asset management because we want for those assets to get the best use for our taxpayers. One of the things that I think is interesting that folks may not realize, but the average age of Kentucky bridges is nearing 50 years, and we're updating these items as we're working on our transportation asset management plan now. And there's a lot of interesting history to that. Obviously, the interstate turned 70 years old this year. And so a lot of bridges on the interstate are reaching their original service life. But also we have bridges, some that are still in service that are more than 100 years old. And so there's a lot that kind of goes into that. But suffice it to say that it's really important as we continue to look at funding needs going forward, that asset management is a really important part of that. And so the next section talks about the general fund programs. And the reason why this became its own section is because this is the first time in Kentucky's history that we've had this level of general fund investment within the transportation programs. And so $450 million in the 2024 session and $230 million in the 2026 session. That's $680 million of state general funds that were put into delivering highway plan projects. And so, I mentioned the HGC program. It had 34 projects totaling $450 million out of the 2024 plan. Some of those estimates as things were delivered went up. And so the total cost of delivering all of those projects at this point is somewhere in the neighborhood of 575 million. For those of you who've heard me give different presentations talking about how important estimates are, that's one of the reasons, is because when we are allocated special funds or something like that, the expectation is that all of those are delivered for the dollars that are available. And unfortunately, that wasn't able to be done with the HGC program. But that is a whole bunch of projects that were either we're in some stages of development before that HGC program came out, that were able to be carried across the finish line. So that's good news. In fact, as we were developing the recommended plan in the fall, about 230 million out of those 450 had been authorized. The largest project in that program from District 11-147 in Laurel County is actually in the letting this month for July. And so that represents a lot of really great work by project development professionals. And realistically, what it led to was confidence that if more general funds were infused into transportation, that transportation and our partners were able to deliver. And so that's something that's really important as we're talking about, again, having needs that outpace available dollars. And so in the 2026 session, $230 million were made available, 30 in the construction ready projects program. In that program, there were 2 design phases, 8 right-of-way, 8 utility, and 35 construction phases. And we've hit the ground running. We've actually already let one of the CRP projects, and we're moving quickly toward getting those projects out there on the street and implemented. And the reason why that's important is because those are dollars that are then able to be used in other ways to support other projects, the ones that would have potentially gone to delivering those projects. And so really important things to keep context of as we're talking about what it is that's available to deliver highway plan projects. And so in the system improvement area, one of the things that I want to call attention to is that everything in here that's not a new project went through the shift evaluation. And so it went through the sponsorship process. It went through the scoring process. And one of the questions that were asked commonly is, well, if a project wasn't sponsored, why did it end up in the recommended plan? And so I wanted to just, talk about that for just a second with this group. And, as we talk about the sponsorship and as we talk about all of those different things, that's very helpful not only for the cabinet but for the General Assembly to understand what the what that top level priority is for each area that does sponsorship. And however, many of the projects that don't get sponsored were added through the legislative process, and so those are continued in future plans and carried forward in order to make sure that none of those things that were previously identified as projects were lost. And as the cabinet and the General Assembly continue to work on future highway plans and things, we're hopeful for things that maybe have been around for a while but are no longer local priorities or no longer local needs, that those are things that can be addressed and removed from future plans. But I wanted to talk for just a second here to say that this portion of the plan is heavily influenced, and the delivery of this portion of the plan is heavily influenced by all of those local and regional conversations that happen throughout the shift. We look very closely at the data that comes in, and I want to thank not only the folks out there that did the work in the ads and the MPOs and the district offices, but also the Division of Planning, specifically Mr. Blackburn and the team that works so hard on shift and scoring and all of those things, because that stuff really helps to inform what these needs are relative to one another in an individual area. And so, if you're not terribly familiar with shift, it looks at safety, economic growth, congestion, benefit cost, asset management, resiliency, and non-motorized mobility as facets of how that score is put together. And non-motorized mobility is only done on local or regional level. It's not done on the statewide level, since those are predominantly interstate parkway projects. And I wanted to call attention to this map here that was put into this year's highway plan, to talk about, a lot of what we talk about from a planning perspective is looking at not only vehicular travel, or looking at all modes as far as pedestrians and cyclists and everybody that's using the network in those ways, but also freight movements. And so this freight map here was added to the highway plan to help explain where the where we have lots of freight moving, and help inform some of the decisions that have either been made recently relative to interstate and parkway expansion, or future decisions that we're working on making there. So just wanted to point that out as well. So the Z various funding area here within the highway plan is ultimately the things that we do that are either programmatic in nature. So think like HSIP, or our statewide funding for removing barriers to accessibility through ADA, but also things like rock falls that are not enumerated project by project, TAP, ITS, CMAC. So all of these different types of things fall within the Z various program. And I'll make mention that this year, as an addition to this program, was a project that looked at how we address needs on state-owned and maintained dam infrastructure here in Kentucky, things that either affect transportation that we own, or things that, like we have some roads that are on top of dams and things like that. And so we did a study through planning over the last couple of years that kind of looked at all of those assets and identified what future needs would be. And so this project was added as a result of needing to address some of those things that were found through that study. So planning in action. Appreciate all of y'all for that. And then looking at these county priority projects programs, so both LARP, which is the Local Assistance Road Program, and the City and County Bridge Improvement Program, these are programs that are administered by the KYTC Department of Rural Municipal Aid, led by Bobby Joe Lewis. And these programs are basically assistance to locals for locally owned assets, and whether those be bridges for the Bridge Improvement Program or roadways for the Local Assistance Road Program. The thing that I'll just make mention of here that might be of interest to folks is that when the recommended plan was put together, we anticipated funding at levels that were in alignment with what had been done the previous biennium, and that was $25 million per year for the Bridge Improvement Program and $20 million per year for the Local Road Assistance Program. And these all come out of road funds, so these would be things that are competing for SPP dollars in the plan. But the funding levels for this over this biennium were $25 million per year for the Bridge Improvement Program, as we had anticipated, and $90 million for the Local Assistance Road Program, $70 million this year, and $20 million in fiscal year 2028 for that Local Assistance Road Program. And for the $70 million that was for this year, I believe that there were 729 projects that were passed that were listed in this section E here. And so basically the narrative also has an environmental update talking about environmental stewardship of our projects and how we comply with different parts of statute related to that. And then the next part is looking at revenue estimates and assumptions. Okay, and so a couple things to make mention of here quickly. In the previous two highway plans, we had future years of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law on the federal level, that we had surety of what those funds look like, and they were increasing each and every year. Well, in this highway plan, at the time that we were developing it, and as of right now, there's not a Surface Transportation Authorization Act for the federal government beyond fiscal year 27. And so when fiscal year 28 starts in October of, I'm sorry, when fiscal year 27 starts in October of this year for the federal government, the we don't yet know what that looks like. And so for the purposes of this highway plan, we did what the federal highway recommendation is, which is just assume that those funds will be flat over those future years. And so normally in the highway plan, we're able to assume some growth within the federal program, but this year we were not able to do that. And the federal program is required to be fiscally constrained. And so that means that basically we just drew a straight line there, and we're awaiting seeing what's going to happen at the federal level. One other thing that I'll mention just about the federal program as a whole is that there's been a lot of discussion over the 5 years of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act of, how many discretionary programs or competitive grant programs there were versus formula programs and those types of things. Mikhail mentioned in his remarks that Kentucky was just awarded a couple of different grants for different projects. And so those are things that are really exciting and important, because those are also funds that are able to be freed up to do other things here as well. But it still remains to be seen kind of what that'll look like as it goes through. The House's version is out now. The Senate is working on theirs, and what that kind of looks like. And I keep hearing folks say that they are hopeful that we will have something passed through Congress and signed by the president by the end of this federal fiscal year. And we're just going to have to see kind of what that looks like and be able to react and respond to it. So, but we are hopeful. And so, one of the things that, you think about relative to the amount of dollars that we have available is, how much of that is state and how much of it is federal. And so this highway plan assumes about $1 billion coming in, rough numbers, from the federal program, and in each of the fiscal years that this highway plan outlines. And then we have state funding projections that we'll talk about a little bit here in a second. I'm going to scroll back up because I missed a table I wanted to show, or at least I think. Maybe not. One of the things that I do want to make mention about before I start talking about state dollars is just the $235 million that's estimated to be required every year to match that federal program. And so when we talk about the federal program, Federal Highway Aid Program is a reimbursement program. And so that means that we have to pay our consultants, our contractors, our expenses before we are reimbursed by the federal government. When we are reimbursed the amount that we spent minus whatever our matching requirements are. And so on a lot of the federal program, that match is 80-20. In some cases, it's a little bit more. In some cases, a little bit less. And as we look at that, each year from a state funding perspective, the first $235 million each year. Oh, it's in the same table. That's why I missed it. The first $235 million each year that we have as far as state revenues are committed to match the federal program, because we don't want to get into a situation where we're unable to leverage and make best use of all of those dollars coming in from the federal government to invest in transportation. And so, that $235 million sounds like a lot, but when you take into context that basically enables us through the federal program to be able to invest, $1.3 billion. That's a pretty good deal. And so if you read the recommended plans narrative, you would have seen that we anticipated there being $50 million available for SPP authorizations within fiscal year 27, which, like I said, started a couple weeks ago. I mentioned just a couple minutes ago about the increased amount of dollars in the local assistance road program. And, like I said, those dollars kind of compete directly. And so from a cash management perspective, we're not really expecting to have much, if any, availability to authorize SPP dollars here within fiscal year 27. And so it's important for us to think about in the highway plan. And I mentioned that, we expected over that 6 years to have about $9.8 billion in available revenue with $29.5 billion in projects. In the biennium, we have some of those same challenges, although to a much lesser degree, as far as available dollars versus what is out there and available. So I just wanted to point that out, only to say that as people are asking questions about, what the schedule will be to move projects forward, we're going to do everything we can to invest all of the available dollars that we have on projects within the highway plan. But we wanted to put out there and be very transparent. And so on page, looks like 27 of that PDF is something called the SPP advisory. I'm not going to read it to you, but I think that it's important to kind of take this context and understand it in reference to what's going on with state funds throughout the highway plan. And so, my time's getting ready to be over here, but I want to take just a couple minutes to talk about things that we anticipate delivering out of this highway plan. We're continuing support for the Brent Spence. We're looking to get I-69 Ohio River Crossing, ORX, under contract. We're doing early works on the Ohio River Bridge at Cairo, which is another, it's not a mega project per se, but it's a really big investment of over $700 million between us and Illinois. Going to be widening I-71 to 6 lanes, the next section there in Oldham County. Going to be completing the Heartland Parkway from, which went all the way, through Campbellsville and through the Marion County area, and going to finish in Washington County there at the Bluegrass Parkway. Going to be getting the Singing Bridge under contract, which again, we just were awarded a grant for last week. Really thankful for that. Convert Burlington Pike to a super street. One of the items that was in the highway plan that's already been delivered is improved access to the new Johnson County High School site in Paintsville. And also making use of federal earmarked funds to advance Town Mountain Road in Pikeville. So, investments from Pikeville to Paducah, all important things that are going to be delivered, and looking forward to what it is that we're going to be able to do in partnership with all of you. But I want to just kind of look back for a second and say that over these last few cycles, since 2020, the Transportation Cabinet has repaired or replaced 660 state and local bridges, improved 20,000 miles of pavement, and awarded more than 3,500 projects to construction at a total highway system investment of nearly $7 billion. And so as we look at that, the reason why we're able to do those things, all starts right here with our planning partners, with the information that goes into building these highway plans and implementing them. And so I can't thank each and every one of you enough for all of the different things that you do to contribute to not only the success of your own organizations, but the success of ours, and ultimately for our ability to help Kentuckians safely reach their destinations, improve economic opportunity, and improve quality of life here in Kentucky. So with that, happy to take questions, but I know that we're right at time, Nathan, so up to you. Thank you all very much.
We've got plenty of time for questions, Jason. You have the man himself, so you all, I think you did a great job talking about the highway plan. And I know I pointed our to my ad planners the narrative about the SPP dollars for them to read. And one question I had, Jason, and I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but that's just bouncing my head is you mentioned federal legislation. I guess there'll be new federal legislation coming in the future.
We hope so.
Is there any from what you've seen coming out? Is there any more? Is there any? Is there potential for increased apportionment for federal funding, or is it going to be about the same? Or have you seen anything like that?
Well, there's a lot of different things that kind of come into play there, and my crystal ball, just like everybody else's, is fuzzy.
Yeah.
Like I said, we're hopeful for the potential for increases, but at the same time, you have that transportation produced revenues are not keeping up with the transportation investment, even from the IIJA. And so I mentioned the kind of historic nature of our general fund infusion into transportation projects here in Kentucky. That's something that's been happening at the federal level for some time now, because the federal motor fuels excise tax hasn't been adjusted since 1993. And so there's a lot of questions. I think it's well identified that transportation infrastructure has a lot of benefits, and there's a lot focused on safety. There's a lot focused on a lot of different things at the federal level. The question for them is going to be, how do we pay for it? And so I think that, as far as transportation professionals are concerned, we've done a really good job as an industry kind of laying out what the benefits are of doing transportation investment. It's something that the presidential administration is very interested in, is in doing transportation investment. And so we're hopeful, but there's a lot of ground to cover between now and the end of September as far as what that bill actually looks like.
Does anybody else have any? Yeah. Jason Blackburn doesn't have a question.
Oh, he gets an audience with me to ask all the time. So I'm not saying he doesn't have questions, but he may have already asked some of them. So
yeah.
Or maybe he's going to wait and ask them to somebody who he thinks can answer them. That could be as well.
Hey, this is Thomas Wood. I got a question.
Hey, Thomas.
The revenue specifically for the state funds. I've heard some things about the gas tax being suspended or frozen. Is that taken into consideration in the narrative, or did that happen kind of after the fact? And is that something else that we should take into consideration?
So there is mention of it within the narrative. And what I'll say is that as we were crafting the narrative for the enacted plan, we thought that it was important to make sure that largely it reflected the work of the General Assembly and kind of how it all came together with information at the time. So it's not hit real hard in here, but the cabinet is continuing to monitor receipts of motor fuels and looking at that as a part of the cash management process. And so it's mentioned, but it's not necessarily highlighted. I'll say that some of the other things that are mentioned as far as pressures on the state funding side are increased costs of maintaining the system, actual maintenance costs here at the transportation cabinet, and those sorts of things as well. So that SPP advisory kind of, like I said, it lays out pretty clearly what the expectation is for availability of funds and what some of those factors and pressures are.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Swalla, for presenting today.
Hope everybody has a great day. Thank you so much for inviting me.
No problem. We're going to, we're all virtual here, so a break. I have a 10-minute break set up. So, but let's stay on schedule. So, 9:55 is when Jason's going to to present again. So you've got 4 minutes to take a phone call or use the restroom, get something to drink, stretch your legs. We'll be back at 9:55. Mr. Blackburn. All right, going to try to keep us on schedule. Hope you had time to use the restroom, stretch your legs, um, you know, get some coffee, that kind of thing. Jason, are you back? Your computer, you ready to go?
I assume you mean me.
Yes, sir, Jason Blackburn,
Yeah,
the one and
we'll
only.
probably listen.
Uh,
We-
I'm just going to go on and turn it over to you. If you want to know more about Jason, you can read it in the speaker bio of the agenda and get this thing going.
10-4. Thanks, Nathan. Good morning, everyone. Hopefully everyone's doing well on this good Wednesday morning. I'm going to be discussing something a little bit different, not necessarily shift today. Shift is definitely the main thing that I work on, but I also have some nice little side projects. One of them involving this today. Sort of related, I guess. So chaff is what I'm here to talk about. Everybody pretty much uses chaff, so you know what what I mean when I say that. And I'll go ahead and share my screen. I'm gonna try to do this live. I have some PDFs if need be, but I'm on the website and going to share my screen. So hopefully everybody can see that instead of me now.
Yes, I can see it.
Perfect. So this, of course, is sort of that chaff page when everybody logs in, whatnot. Actually, this is the pre-construction side. We'll go to chaff, and I'll open one up, open a beautiful one that I recently created. Oh boy. I think it was probably this one right here. Yep, this is it. So this is, typical chaff and whatnot. And what we have concerns with is right here on the needs tab, you see a purpose and need. And of course, you see my great purpose and need for this project that I found. But we're basically going to be kind of shifting some things around. When chaff was developed back, years ago, and if we go here, back to this page, and let's say that we're going to request the chaff. So we're starting off brand new. And this is relevant from a shift perspective because, as new projects are going to be, developed and whatnot, I'll start right here. Request the chaff. Everybody's probably familiar. Here's the information that you have to fill out, including this box right here. These are all asterisks, and so it won't move forward until you fill it out. So the description. Now, I think that when chaff was first developed, the thought with this was that whoever tries to make a new project or whatnot, a new chaff, they would just type in a basic description of what they think is going on or what the circumstances are, and then things would move forward. For better or for worse, though, this description box kind of automatically gets transferred into for other systems, the design side of things, and then this becomes the project description, so to say, for highway plans. And the facts are that it's in the wrong order. We shouldn't be developing a description as the first step in a process. The actual first description would be that need on the previous page that I showed. And so with that, we're just going to make a couple of tweaks. And so instead of a description here, you're going to see the word need. So that's what will be required. And I'm not going to get in depth with that. That's our next group, Mr. Springer, I think Ms. Hoskins and Mr. DeWitt will be discussing, some in-depth purpose and need stuff. How to do it, but that's what's going to change. Is that instead of everyone typing in a need, you'll be typing in a description to create a chaff. You'll be typing in a need, and it's important that listen to the following presentation so that everybody can understand what that proper need is. Needs will change and whatnot as the project evolves. But a good start, a good foundation is always great. So to go back to the other thing that we were at, I'm trying to be brief here. So once your need is put in, when you come to say this page, it'll be the same basic things. That need will transfer over to here, and that'll be there. And then we'll still have to type in perhaps a purpose as things start to move forward, because the logical order should be need. And then once you have a need, that's with the need is when you can develop an actual purpose of the project. And then last but not least will be the box for the description. And that's going to change in that only the highway district members or perhaps central office members, highway employees are the only ones that'll be allowed to type in an actual description. That's this up here, because really and truly, you can't develop a proper highway description until you kind of went through the process. If you don't have a need, if you don't have a purpose, you don't have potential fixes. It's or what the project's going to address. you can't have that description. So that's the kind of a big change that's coming through. It's not a huge thing. It's just some rearranging, so to say, but it's a little harder work than what everybody thinks behind the scenes. They're working on it now, but it's not anticipated to be live until October, perhaps the end of October. Once it is live, we'll send out a message letting everyone know. But you'll see when you go to create a chaff, you'll see that there's a few little modifications. For the district office, we'll talk about it a little bit later because there's going to be another change in that this description is a requirement in order for a chaff to transfer to the other side of PDMP, the pre-con side. So, that's before a pre-con project can be created. This description will have to be filled in by the district office. So that's pretty much it. It shouldn't be a big change from workflow. But we did want to let everybody know that it's coming, and just trying to, fine tune our process as we continue forward with everything. Any questions? I guess there's 3 minutes left. So any questions, thoughts, comments, concerns? I know I've mentioned this over the last few months, so it shouldn't be a big surprise, but we're finally able to get this done. Anything? Perfect, Nathan. The next group is who needs to have as much time as possible.
Well,
so
I was going to ask you one question.
Yep.
Should folks, if it gets around September time and they need to make a chaff, should they wait till the new? No. Okay.
No, because the bottom line is that, if it was me and this scenario actually comes up between now and September and you're going to create one, in the description, I would just type in something, TBD, to be determined. And then once it's created, no other changes can, how the system works right now. You can't create any other changes in chaff, save any other data until a purpose and need, there's those boxes are kind of filled in. So just put TDP in the beginning. And then once it's created, go into that purpose and need box like that need and type in what that need is. That way everything transfers over directly. Good question. I actually thought about that last night as I was playing things in my head, and I should have mentioned that. So great job.
Any other questions? Are y'all tabling for this afternoon? Maybe they're tabling for this afternoon.
That'll work. And then one more thing, at our next meeting, I do anticipate some shift updates, so to say, because that's kind of the last meeting before we kick off again. So everybody stay tuned. We have a few things that it's going to be good, I think. So thank you all.
All right, we'll jump into our next presentation. I will do a formal introduction for our next 2 speakers from our consultant partners, QK4. Mr. Tom Springer and Miss Lindsay Hoskins. Tom serves as the QK4's Planning Environmental Department Director. His 30-plus year career has focused on transportation planning and environmental project management and coordination. He's worked on corridor and feasibility studies, interchange justification studies, community impact analysis, public involvement, technical report preparation, and NEPA documents from category exclusions to environmental impact statements. His work spans projects of significant scale and impact, from large complex efforts such as the Louisville Southern Indiana Ohio River Bridges Project to community-centered safety initiatives like the Barstown Road Safety Study, which resulted in a crash reduction of more than 50%. Speaking alongside Tom will be Lindsay Hoskins, also from QK4. Lindsay started her career in 2016 at the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet as a scholarship student in District 5. During her time with KYTC, she served as D5's environmental coordinator before transitioning into an environmental project management role in the Division of Environmental Analysis and later on to the Division of Program Management. She's well-versed in project management, public engagement, NEPA documentation, technical writing, and reviewing and project funding requirements and processes. Since joining QK4 team in 2020, she has continued to serve as an environmental project manager and supports transportation planning studies. We also going to have Mr. Steve DeWitt present with them as well. If you don't know Steve, his bio's in there, but he's my boss. He's a good guy. And Steve, one thing I noticed in your bio when I was reading through it, we need to add something about your new kiddo in there. I think I pulled this from an old STP agenda. So that being said, I'm going to turn it over to those folks.
That's probably the only thing I need to put in there from now on.
Yeah. I'm going to turn it over to those folks, whoever's presenting first. I believe both Lindsay and Tom are both on as well. So I'm going to shut up and turn it over to them.
Stephen, do you want to kick this off or you want me to jump in?
No, I think Blackburn said a lot of what the stuff I can contribute. I can pop in as needed, but you guys are I think good to go.
Okay. Well, good morning. My name's Tom Springer. I am whatever the introduction statement said there. Lindsay has really helped me prepare a lot of this presentation, but I'm going to walk through it and she can jump in as needed. What's fun for me listening to all the stuff this morning leading up to this and looking at the attendance. I know a lot of you for a lot of years. I've worked with many of you for decades, and then there's a whole bunch of you I don't know. So this is great. I love meeting new people and continuing to evolve in this field, and I've been very blessed to work here. So I'm going to start our presentation with a high level overview of the purpose and need. So, and then we're going to get down into the weeds. So let me get my presentation pulled up. Sorry, I had it pulled up. Can everyone see this?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Purpose and need statement, development.
Yep.
Okay, great. So you also need to know there's going to be quizzes and they're going to be Slidos. So you need your phone, and those are going to pop up every now and then. So, my mother was a high school teacher and there's always pop quizzes in my life. So keep that rolling today. So I'm going to talk about why purpose and need is needed, what it is, how it's development, and why does that matter in planning specifically, since that's the audience, and then touch on a number of KYTC policies that address purpose and need. So why is it needed? Going back to the source, it is required under several laws. And it is frequently the target of NEPA legislation. In the NEPA world, we're always worried about getting sued and making sure that we have a legally defensible document, and the purpose and need is a huge part of that. And it is also used as a measuring stick to assess alternatives and then ultimately select the preferred. So let's start with the laws, backing up all the way to 1969 National Environmental Policy Act in the top left corner, 40 CFR 1502.13. This is the foundation. This is the first time it was mentioned, and this is what guides us forward. The statement shall briefly specify the underlying purpose and need to which the agency is responding in proposing the alternatives included in the proposed action. Okay, top right corner, 40 CFR 1500, the CEQ, which is the Council on Environmental Quality. CEQ is established in NEPA, but all they really do is provide guidance. But they provided this guidance that CEQ issued regulations for implementing NEPA. Okay. So after they did that, getting closer to home here, FHWA in 23 CFR 771 said to address the CEQ requirements, FHWA issued regulations for environmental impact and related procedures where they have laid out what goes in a purpose and need statement for a highway project. And then bringing it closer to home in planning, Appendix A of 40 CFR addresses the Pell process, linking planning to NEPA. It says the transportation planning process also provides a potential forum to define a project's purpose and need by framing the scope of the problem to be addressed by a proposed project. So, as Jason mentioned, talking about need first, in the planning phase, we're identifying what is the need, what is the problem that we're trying to solve. So we also mentioned, I'll talk on this a little bit more, that the purpose and need evolves, right? But really, it shouldn't evolve much. It evolves with new data, it evolves with new information. You know, we all know some of these projects take 10 plus years. You know, the purpose and need needs to be updated, but the foundation really should stay the same. And that's why planning starts here, starts with that, and is important in the ultimate delivery of it. So talk about avoiding legal challenges. One thing I wanted to bring up, because I think it's kind of interesting, is we are worried about we're going to get sued over NEPA. If someone sues us, it's actually, they have to sue us under the Administrative Procedures Act, the APA, because NEPA is a process law. So if a citizens group or an organization wants to stop a project and think that we were, wrong, they're going to say we didn't follow the process. Well, the process is in large part how we develop the purpose and need, right? We go through a process. So they file under APA, and the number one complaints are that we were arbitrary and capricious, that we just made up a project and really didn't support it. We were very arbitrary about it, and we hurt people in the process and had impacts, and we just didn't care. That's the number one complaint. Or it's an abuse of discretion, because let's say we just failed to follow the process, failed to give it a real, good shake, or we didn't do enough documentation and it was very insufficient. Those are the common complaints in a lawsuit. So purpose and need, starting in the top left there, is used as a key factor in determining the range of alternatives. Moving to the right, it is the measuring stick for assessing those alternatives, and I have some examples later on. And it is a key element in the decision-making document in the NEPA world. So on the bottom left, in NEPA, you have three real documents. You have a CE, a FONSI, or a ROD. To get to a FONSI, you usually have an environmental assessment. You have to have that. To get to a ROD, you usually have an environmental impact statement and a draft and a final environmental impact statement. But there are some other laws too, where the purpose and need gets used or gets inputted into the documentation for those laws. And some of those may, like if we have a state-funded project, they still may be applied to these laws over here on the right, bottom right, which is Section 4F of the 1966 U.S. Department of Transportation Act. So executive orders on wetlands and floodplains, and then permitting. So the Corps of Engineers does a lot of this internally, but they have to describe why a project is either the least overall damaging environmental project, which is called the LEDPA, or not. If they're going to permit a project that has lots of impacts, they need to have a strong purpose and need to support that. So purpose and need developed in planning or PELs and other documentation gets copied and pasted into their report, whether we have NEPA or not. So again, I say that because it emphasizes the importance of getting the language right and really thinking about it and being very strategic in how you write those, from the SHAFE or shaft, I always get that wrong, SHAFE all the way through final documentation. All right, ready for your first quiz? Get your Slidos out or your phones out, scan the QR code. And here are your questions. Which of the following are not common legal challenges to NEPA documents? Insufficient documentation, failure to meet the schedule the federal agency committed to, arbitrary and capricious decisions by the federal agency, a federal agency's abuse of discretion because of their failure to meet the requirements. All right, we got 5 people so far. 10. So it's not a common legal challenge. 17. $22. No, we had some 60 some people to begin with, so I'll wait till we get a few more in. All right, we're probably about halfway. That's good sample size. The winner is correct. Is a failure to meet the schedule the federal agency committed to. Even if that was in a grant application or any other schedule, schedules are very important to the real world. But when we talk about legal challenges in NEPA, they're going to sue us over insufficient documentation, abuse of power and discretion, or we're arbitrary and capricious. So now you know the answer, so good job. All right, so what is it? What is the purpose and need? It is a concise, data-driven statement that informs the scope, logical project termini, and range of alternatives. It explains why the expenditure of public funds is necessary and worthwhile. So it is. I have some examples, and they're very short, obviously. That's what I want to drive home. But if the amount of time spent per word should be a lot, right? It has to be right. You really want to focus on getting the language exactly what it is. Don't be just haphazard about it. So the purpose, middle column here, is what the project is trying to accomplish. Moving down from that, it's stated as the expected positive outcome. For example, the purpose is to reduce traffic congestion in the corridor. Right there, the need is why the project is needed. It's evidence that a problem exists or will exist if projections are realized. So the project is needed because the corridor currently operates at level of service F, which represents unacceptable congestion or stop-and-go conditions. Okay. So what the purpose and need is not. It is not an opinion and needs to be backed up by data and unbiased. And the second one there is a very common problem we've all done, probably. I'm sure, I know I have. Probably all of us done. It's the most obvious glaring errors when we say what the solution is. And I want to touch on this several times, but sometimes in the highway project, the highway plan, we're given a solution. And it's like, well, that's the state legislation. They tell us what to do. So, it is what it is. So, but in the purpose and need statement, we need to back off of what a solution is. We don't want to say the purpose is to build a bypass. The purpose is to add a right turn lane. That's not the purpose. Okay. So moving on to the other one, this is an error that I know I've made. Other people have too. In fact, back into the lawsuits, I know that we've had some projects get sued over the purpose and need because you got muted.
Yeah, you got mute. You hit mute on.
You're still muted, Tom.
You said lawsuits and they muted you.
I am. Yeah. Now I'm not muted, right?
Correct. We can hear you.
I don't know what happened, man. I didn't touch anything.
Hey, Tom, before you jump back into the everything but the kitchen sink, I wanted to add just a clarifying thing. On the previous slide, we said it is a intended positive outcome, but then on this one, we're saying it's not a solution. So like an example of that, the intended positive outcome could be to increase capacity, but you're not going to say to add a second lane. You're not giving the way that you do it, but the positive outcome is what you want to happen because of it.
Exactly. Okay, I'm going to jump back in kitchen sink. which is something I've done before that has caused some problems, is we try to throw in everything. Don't read the text there. Should be project specific. If no evidence of safety need, then safety should not automatically be included. And I say that because everything we do in the highway department, especially of late, is geared towards safety, right? That is a huge driving force in what we do. Safety is important across the board. Jason touched on it throughout the highway plan. Every RFP for consultants mentions how you're going to advance safety. I mean, safety is everywhere. But if this isn't a safety project, then don't throw safety in there. If it's just congestion, it's just congestion. If it's just roadway deficiencies, it's just roadway deficiencies. So that's, takes some discipline to cut and not add everything. And lastly, over to the right is we're not trying to sell the project, which sometimes is difficult because we all get handed projects, right? And our job is to advance them, and the purpose and need may be thin. And so we want to maybe beef it up a little bit and try to sell this project, but that is not our role. Our role is, if the purpose is thin and the data is thin, so be it. That's what it is. That's what we need to document. If the project advances, it'll advance for other reasons. Okay, so how is the project purpose and need different than the goals and objectives? So the purpose and need are you must have these in your documentation from the chaff all the way through the NEPA document and NEPA reevaluations, so with the purpose being the what of the project based on the needs, and the needs are the fact-based evidence of why the project exists. Examples of goals are specific desired future outcomes, like the goal to be environmentally sustainable and to be compatible with local objectives. And some objectives include measurable goals, what it is that we hope to come out to support, advancements and other ideas. But those really aren't the purpose and need. Those are just goals and objectives. So if you have other things that don't really fit into the purpose and need, put them in the goals and objectives. All right, so it is a somewhat evolving and living statement. I put somewhat because it most certainly is a living document because of time, and new things do come up, and new crash data, new traffic forecasts, new land use changes. But if you really change a purpose and need statement from the beginning, then you got to think about re-coordinating that. So my last sentence there, and I have some examples of this. If major changes occur, it needs to be documented for sure, and possibly coordinated with FHWA and other agencies via purpose and need white paper. So some that I've written will start out in the planning document. We said this. Since that time, the logical termina changed. A good example is a bridge. Had purpose and need. Part of it was replace a bridge, but the bridge program replaced a bridge at some point. So that had to come out, and we had to have other reasons why to advance this overall project. All right, so a little timeline. So starting in planning, first identify transportation plans, highway plans, statewide plans, all kinds of plans. Maybe the first opportunity for agencies and other interested parties to have input on the purpose and need, and we'll have a draft purpose and need statement with data. So in the planning phase and in planning documents, whether they're corridor plans or area plans or whatever, it's still a draft purpose and need. It's draft until NEPA's signed. So in the next phase, in preliminary engineering and the environmental analysis phase, we should take that from planning, update it. If it wasn't a planning study, it wasn't previously screened, developed a draft purpose and need. And if it's a big project, we got to sometimes consider getting FHWA specific input and asking for specific feedback on the purpose and need statement and data. And then when we do agency coordination, it should be part of that. And then the final NEPA document, the purpose and need, should be consistent with all that from above. And include an environmental document for preliminary engineering reports, like your design executive summary and things like that should have the exact same purpose and need. It doesn't get tweaked as in those documents. Okay. Oh, quiz time. All right, y'all, get your phones out. The purpose and need statement drives the process for development and evaluation of reasonable, prudent, and practical alternatives. True or false? There you go. The answer is true, in case you guys didn't know that. Good pupils. All right, I think everybody's hitting 100 on that one. It wasn't easy, actually. Yeah, we always have that one. All right, I'm jumping ahead. I got to stay on track, man. I don't want you guys dinging me on my schedule, my evaluation. So how is it developed? I'm going to get into the meat of all the things, okay? So what goes in the purpose need statement? So the purpose is the problem statement, and the why is the supporting facts, the data. So helpful hint, use plain language. You're writing, one of your potential audiences is a judge or their legislative assistants or whatever they're called in the back room, reviewing this. They have no idea what horizontal and vertical deficiencies are, right? So we're writing it for plain language. We want action verbs, to provide, to obtain, to repair. Use bullet points and numbering is highly encouraged, provides a specific supporting data for each. So the data should be current, and that's that can be somewhat of a problem in our business. It takes a long time to get these projects going. We have traffic forecasts that are 5 years old, and nobody's scoped to update those. But we got to do our best, especially if it's going to be a challenge or a controversial project. Describe agency and public input and reviewing the purpose and need. Very simple. That purpose and need was presented at the April 1st public meeting. Use graphics and charts and tables and maps as needed, because again, we're writing to the public, we're writing to people who may be very concerned about the project. So you're writing a problem statement. We got to state the reason why KYTC is proposing the project and articulate 1 or 2 sentences. So here's an example of a good purpose and need statement. The purpose of the project is to reduce congestion and improve mobility on Kentucky 1776 between Elm Street and Oak Avenue. This is a bad purpose and need statement. The purpose of the project is to widen Kentucky 1776 between Elm and Oak from a 2-lane to a 4-lane road to relieve congestion. That bad example gives a solution. And particular action does not fully state the problem, even if that was a direct quote in the highway plan. Oh, all right. Get another quiz. I don't have that many, but here's another one. Which of the following tips is not recommended for developing a purpose and need statement? Using plain language, using graphics, charts, tables, maps. Provide a list of preliminary alternatives under consideration. Provide a specific supporting data for each need. So which is not. It's kind of fun. Yeah. All right, so we hit 30. That's about half the group. Most of you got this right. Yes, we are not providing a list of preliminary alternatives in the purpose and need consideration. In a NEPA document, the alternatives, well, in all the documents, planning and NEPA and everything, the alternatives come after that. After we've defined the problem, and the purpose of the project, the why and the what. Then we're going to look at all the alternatives that could possibly get there, including widening, bypassing, no build. No build is always on the option, but that comes in the next chapter. So why is the project needed? So it's evidence that the project exists. As Jason talked about, the need would be the first thing we enter in the chat form, and that is the evidence. So it's data, it's tables, graph, it's a problem, and it's not really related to goals, and it's consistent with the purpose statement. They have to be in the same, subjects. So a good needs sentence is the project is needed because Kentucky 1776 between intersection with Elm and Oak Street, the existing facility is inadequate to meet current and future traffic volumes, resulting in congestion, reduced mobility, level service F. That's good. And to say the project is needed to add lanes is not good. That does not provide any data to support it. All right, the slide here lists the 9 elements in the purpose and need statement. And these words come directly from FHWA guidance. They're found in KYTC guidance, in the design manual, in the CE manual, and the planning manual. This is your menu or your suite of options to include in your purpose need statement. At the top is the project status. So usually we don't think of that as part of the purpose and need statement, but that is part of the law. And what's important is that it's not really in the purpose and need statement per se that we've talked about, but that the project status is included in the planning and environmental documents, because the audience, again, is either the public, resource agencies, or worst case scenario, a judge or somebody completely on the outside. And they need to know in which phase or where were you in the project status. So it's like the project history a little bit. It's like project was in the 2000 comp plan, is in the 2010 corridor study, and it's now in the highway plan, right? So some context of where we are. Then later we're going to get in and got a slide on each of these: legislation, capacity, safety, system linking, social demands, and economic development. Put a parenthetic, be careful with this one. Also in the top right, legislation, rarely used. Modal interrelationships, roadway deficiencies, and transportation demands. Okay, so where do you find information to support the need? Data on past performance or future performance projections. Direction provided in legislation. We're going to touch on that a little bit. Objectives identified in the transportation planning process or the whole transportation development process. So factual information and the project record and input provided by agencies and the public, for sure. And then studies that identify facts about that area. So project status, which I mentioned a minute ago. Data sources, where is it in the highway plan? Is it funded? Are there earmarked dollars or grants? Are we on a schedule? You're providing the setting, the context. Is it in the tip, in the STIP, in the history? And so how to answer that is just to document details on the highway and other plans, and to identify any measures taken to date to advance this project. So here's just an example. The project dates back to the studies in the early 1990s. This is a Kentucky project down Pulaski County. The Transamerica Transportation Corridor Facility from 1994. It shows some history, right? The Southern Kentucky Corridor Economic Justification and Feasibility study from 97, and the I-66 Southern Kentucky Corridor study from 2000. For those of us who were around, remember that. It's like sucked the life out of everything. Identify the need for this project. The Northern Corridors in Somerset. The Northern Corridor between Somerset and London was identified as a top priority segment. The project is currently in the 2026 highway plan as item 8-59.5, 6, and 7. And then you'd probably put that information in a table. I just snipped it out with a highway plan and put it in there. But that's your project status, right? That's telling whoever is reviewing this project from afar, may not know anything about it, but man, this project has some history and it's still valid. It's still current. All right, capacity. Now we're getting into nuts and bolts. So on the left, we have data sources, traffic counts and forecasts and highway capacity analysis, level of service, VOCs and Q links and quantitative data, travel time, reliability, the stuff that we gather through the planning process and project development. You have questions to consider. Is this capacity of the existing facility adequate to serve? What is the projected demand? What capacity is needed? What is the level of service? And then answer those by discussing the capacity and the present facility and the ability to meet the demands. Discuss the capacity of the existing facility, its existing anticipated level of service and deficiencies, and state the targeted level of service. I have examples. I don't know that you got all the time in the world to go through all these, but I'll read this one here. The purpose of the project is to provide additional capacity, Kentucky 1776 from Jason Blackburn Street to Easy Street, to accommodate existing capacity and future traffic demands for vehicular and truck traffic along the corridor. The project is needed to reduce congestion, 1776, because level of service F, representing stop and go conditions and desired level of service C for this project. This project is needed to accommodate future traffic demands, since traffic, including truck volumes, is expected to increase 10% over the next 20 years. So there we are, objective data saying what we're after. All right, so transportation demand is very similar to congestion, but it's actually looking much forward thinking. Are there regional transportation plans or adopted comprehensive plans that are going to say, look, this place is going to blow up? Think like Bullitt County and all the development from the airport and Amazon and things like that. Our traffic models and traffic forecasts are showing we have major demands in this area. So will the project meet future transportation demands based on projected population, employment growth, increased freight movement, or other demands in the system? And so you discuss the project's relationship to these larger development patterns and traffic patterns in the area. So an example would be the purpose of the project is to provide intersection improvement along US 60 to meet future traffic demands along the corridor. In 2025, the MTP, LRTP state that all 23 signalized intersections along the road corridor need to operate level of service C or better to meet the demand. It's based on population and employment growth. Estimate all this up though. That's not a real project example. All right, so here's one that I want to raise a big red flag about. Bottom center is red. These are social demands or economic development. So think about District 3, Transpark is one of these. Right in the bottom center already, this need element is uncommon and must be well documented because it could spark indirect and cumulative impact analysis. So above it, I say, would this road be warranted but for this development, right? So if I'm going to build a new road from A to B and it's going to open up that area for development, there's a potential problem that you now need to assess and document all the environmental impacts from that development. So that's why this is used with caution. Sometimes it's real, right? Like that's the purpose of building the road, is we're going to open this area up for development. And if it is, it is. But going back to the previous one on transportation demand, it's like development's going to go here, so we need to build the road. So it's a little chicken and the egg. Okay, it can get confusing, but this is one where you seek guidance and you got to be very careful about it. So there's probably questions about that, but I think my takeaway or my point would be is just to use social demands or economic development with caution. It's like we are supposed to be focused on transportation. The bottom right bullet here is, it is important that the purpose and need be grounded in transportation as much as possible, right? To describe the projected economic land use changes that indicate the need for the highway. We're not building roads for economic development. We're building roads in response to growth that's going to occur.
Hey, Tom, I want to add that this is usually never the standalone purpose and need. It can be a supplement. And how he mentioned the transportation need is the most important. If those plans or whatever have that this economic development is happening with or without this plan, a purpose of your project can be to support that, to support the ongoing local development, but then it's up to the local development to account for their environmental impacts, because those would be happening with or without the project.
Agree. And the overall takeaway for everybody is just to be aware of this, right? To be cautious about it, to know that this is a potential problem. All right. I'm just going to skip over that example. We're going to jump to safety, because safety should be ubiquitous in a lot of projects, not all of our projects, but data sources, planning studies, DNA studies, safety analysis, detailed crash data, manner of collision, and the CAPCO analysis. See that data, and then strong public and agency concern. We were actually at a public meeting last night, and a lot of people talked about how many crashes they've almost seen. Near misses, don't hit the data, but I say, look, you can't see turning left out of here. And, that information is part of it. So the questions to consider is the proposed project necessary to correct a safety problem? Are there existing crash rates higher than the other statewide facilities? And how will the proposed project improve it? So to answer those is you discuss crash data and get in detail, use maps and data and tables, and discuss all the types and the crash patterns and what is contributing to the causes and the rates. And we identify existing high hazard sections of the facility, right? It may just be one curve, maybe the whole area. This is probably the most detailed and area that we should all dive into. But if it's not applicable on every project, in the bottom right language there, then don't include it, right? So you need documentation to support it. If this isn't a safety problem, don't make it a safety problem. But if it is, dive into it. So an example is the purpose of the project is to address safety on Spring Street between mile 0.0 and 2.5. The project is needed to address the safety concerns highlighted by the crash data, which are notably higher than the statewide averages. The two-lane road has experienced, say, 7 head-on collisions, resulting in 8 injuries, crashes between 2020 and 2025. The sharp curves located between mile 0.1 and mile 1.25 could be contributing to this concentration of crashes. There are currently no passing lanes along the corridor. So it's a support that why this safety is the purpose of the project. Okay, talk about system linkage is another one. So data sources are local and regional long-range transportation plans and local plans. The little map up there is the Easton Bridge in Louisville. It connected northeast Jefferson County with southern Indiana. System linkage was the purpose and need. Questions to consider: is the proposed project a local, regional, or interregional connected link? Links include existing facilities, modal facilities, geographic areas, all kinds of stuff. So how does it fit into the transportation system? Would linkage really be enhanced? I've seen system linkage used a lot on, when we're really just adding a turn lane. It's like, well, it's not really system linkage. It's already linked, right? We're just increasing capacity. But that would be used sometimes because we're linking two roads. Like, well, I don't know if that's the appropriate use or not. So how to answer is discuss how the proposed project fits into the existing transportation network, of course, and contributes to the movement of people, goods, and services. It's like, how the proposed project contributes to the multimodal transportation network. There's another one. So this is a language from the Louisville Southern Indiana Ohio River Bridges Project. The purpose of this project is to improve cross-river mobility between Jefferson County and Clark County. That's it. $1 billion project is based on one sentence, right? It's a great example of keeping it simple. Several specific factors demonstrate the need for action, including, it went on about traffic congestion downtown and all that stuff, but inadequate cross-river transportation system linkage and freeway rerouting opportunities in eastern portion of the Louisville metropolitan area. That was our purpose and need for that project. They even have the PDF of that, but this is the exact language. And again, I think it's a great example, but to show how a very complicated project can sometimes be very simple purpose and need. And it's easier to add more. It's harder to get it succinct and to the point. All right, multimodal or modal interrelations. So thinking beyond just cars and crashes and congestion, this is a big one throughout Kentucky. We're looking at freight plans, bicycle and pedestrian master plans, our complete street policy too, local and regional plans and comp plans. So how will the proposed project interface with with and serve to complement other modes of transportation, airports, freights, rail, ports, bike heads, passenger transit services? TARC is always a big one on our metro or, any public transportation in metro areas. So how does it fit into the complete streets policy? And so, the way you answer it is identify the needs and address other modes of transportation with airports and rail port facilities, passenger transit, and even ride sharing and special use lanes. But if it's not part of your project, don't include it. But if it is, for sure, include it. So here's a just example. Purpose of the project is to improve intermodal connectivity by improving the highway to effectively carry heavy freight vehicles on Highway US 60 between Henderson, Riverport, and I-69. The need for the project is to improve the projected level of service F, stop and go traffic. Carried it on and say the port would generate 200 heavy trips a day. So this is part of the need, right? This is a real problem that connects intermodal mobility. Roadway deficiencies. So I often think of bridges. Jason talked a lot, Jake Sawala talked a lot about the bridge program and asset management. Asset management and roadway deficiencies are often related. So bridge inspection reports and pavement conditions, and we have our design manual. I put the Coast Guard clearance limits, maybe a bridge over the river that isn't meeting that. So the questions to consider, is the project necessary to correct roadway geometric deficiencies, and how will the proposed project address them? Are the deficiencies or bridge standards, or is the bridge posted, for example, or whatever data you have to support the roadway deficiencies should be used in that project. So here's just a quick purpose and need of a bridge. To address structural issues related to the existing bridge over Bottomless Creek. And then the need, of course, would be the ratings that support that. All right, so I'm trying to jump through these because at the end, I really want to make everybody aware of the policies that are available. So legislation. This is one of the options in the policies and the federal laws and guidance. But in the bottom big old red box there, use with caution. This need element is uncommon and rarely used. It is not the highway plan. Kentucky is unique in a lot of ways, but one of which is that we get a highway plan that's legislation passed down to the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet to carry out. Well, that's ubiquitous. That's every project is pretty much in that, right? So that is not, legislation is not a need based on, because it's in the highway plan and that is legislation. Legislation should be reserved for very unique projects that have specific legislation toward that project. Okay. So data source, put federal, state, or local mandate for the action. This is to supplement. It is not the sole or main reason for sure. So probably can't read all that in the top left, but well, maybe you can. The Highway 66 in Somerset is a high priority corridor in the national highway system. My next slide has more on that, but questions to consider is there specific legislation and is it a congressionally designated project? And then you want to document the need to respond to that local or state federal requirement. Okay, so for example, federal legislation supports the project purpose of providing a new north-south corridor between Charleston, South Carolina through Winston-Salem, North Carolina. All right, I found this one on the internet. I had to search hard to find an example of legislation when achieved. So the I-73 corridor was identified a high priority project by U.S. Congress in ICE-T of 1991. Congress designated high priority corridors as those that would provide the most most efficient way of integrating regions, linking major population centers in the country, providing opportunity to increase growth, travel, and all that, right? So yeah, this is one where you have a specific federal legislation about a specific project. All right, ready for your next quiz? Pupils, which of the following topics is included in a purpose and need statement? Drum roll. Benefits of the project. Preliminary cost estimates, justification of why KYTC or FHWA is completing the project, and environmental impact summary. Doing good. All right, you guys are doing great. All right, benefits of the project and justification of why KYTC or FHWA is completing the project are certainly major topics in the purpose and need. There's room later for preliminary cost estimates and environmental impact summary. All right, good job, everybody. All right, so why does it matter in planning? First, we have planning environmental linkages we want to talk about. Transportation agencies can use their transportation planning process to produce decisions or analysis that can later be adopted in NEPA. And so the feds and all of us are trying to streamline things, and Pell projects are a great opportunity for that. So it's important to use a terminology consistent with NEPA, those elements of purpose and need that I just went through in the planning stage. So we go from planning, preliminary design, and environmental. And they form the next steps and develop conceptual purpose and need, and directly informs our scope and helps the cabinet or the project team get the next project off to the next phase. All right, so my next to last slide. Hang here with me. There are a lot of resources out there about a purpose and need statement. So we have AASHTO, the Plant Practitioner's Guide, defining purpose and need and determining the range of alternatives. We got several CEQ guidance and updated guidance from them. We have the laws. It's very important to always go back to the foundation, why the stuff exists. FHWA guidance on purpose and need. A lot of it, transportation decision-making process and planning environmental linkages, and federal aid, LPA projects, and then synchronizing environmental reviews for transportation and other infrastructure. Okay, and on this slide, the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet has multiple documents that address purpose and need. And the top one listed is over at UK, the Kentucky Transportation Center. They have a body of knowledge that has a lot of these documents in them. But the planning manual, even the updated planning guidance manual, has a very robust section on purpose and need and what should be included in it. The categorical exclusion manual does the same thing. There is a purpose and need guidance and instructions from January 2005 as a design memo. The highway design manual has language on what should go into the purpose and need. And then the planning manual, the latest one, I found anyway, I think it's 2026. I don't know. That also has policies and language on that. In fact, I'm going to pull some of those up. This is, forget which one this is. This is the design manual. So we have, purpose and need language, and it links you to FHWA's policies. And we have, there's the Louisville Bridges project. This is simple, pretty straightforward purpose and need project on there. This is a white paper. One time we did, this is Mountain Parkway, because the project evolved so much that we had as an appendix what the purpose and need was, what has changed and what got built over time. Here's purpose and need from 2000 to 2003, and then where it is today. And then it ends with what the new purpose and need statement in 2022 was. And then we send that to FHWA and then get feedback and other resource agencies. Let's see, I've got the other, this is the CE manual. It hits on all these same elements of the purpose and need that I just went through. And then the 2005 policy. This is actually a 2005 policy on projects that don't need a purpose and need statement. And I found this on KTC's webpage, body of knowledge, maintenance projects and guardrail and resurfacing. I think that's important to note, that there is a policy out there that on what we don't need to put a purpose and need for. I think that's about it, unless I have planning, the planning manual, since we're talking about planning, I ended that one. Same elements right here, and they reference back to the laws and how to use these and what forms are used, and what steps are needed and when is the project complete, and it talks about that. It informs the next phase. So that is the end of my presentation. It is 10:59. I know we got a lot of people. We've got a schedule. I think I have to 11, so did most of the talking there. But I will now be glad to answer any questions if you guys are still there, if you're still with me.
Any questions for Tom? I'm going to ask a question, I guess. I was thinking when you presented on the legislation, I was thinking, I guess like the Appalachian Development Highway System, I think that would maybe would that fall in that kind of category for need if the project was related to that?
Yes, I think that would, if there's specific legislation to back that up. Yes.
Any other questions out there?
Yeah, hey, this is Tom Hall with District 5. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. First of all, Tom and Lindsay, that was a really good, comprehensive discussion of purpose and need, and I thought that was really great. My one comment about safety would be that I just wanted to mention that the cabinet has a data-driven safety analysis policy, and it talks about when specifically we may and should and shall use safety in our project purpose and need. And, that's available. I think and I assume we're still using that. But it is based in, doing segment analysis using the, CDAC program. And, if you get certain levels of safety need, then you, can include or should include or shall include safety in the description. And I just kind of wanted to mention that. And that's really all I wanted to say.
Thanks, Tom. I know we're working on updating the DDSA manual, so we're also kind of following HSIP and Office of Highway Safety's lead and including the safe system approach. We want to also look forward at the conditions that are risk factors for a crash and if they can be improved, as well as the sort of backward looking analysis that we do with CDAT and those factors. So it's a moving target, and policy doesn't always keep up with it.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Well, I will say this, Tom, you did an excellent job. People didn't know we first approached him. He's like, I don't know. And I thought you did an excellent job because it's something I'm not really haven't been exposed to at KYTC. And I had a very good understanding after you presented like what to do essentially. And I like the slides that said, you had the concerns and then, the questions asked and then what you can consider. And I also point out that, this presentation is being recorded. So you will and the PowerPoint and the presentation will be on our SDP page for you all to reference in the future. So thank you again, sir, for presenting. If nobody has any other questions, we will break and come back at we'll try to get let's come back at 12 minutes. I guess that's fine. We'll come back at 11:15. I saw Lynn and Jennifer and Jeremy are there, so you all 11:15 or a little bit before, I'll circle back with you all and do my introductions and then turn it over to you. right. It's just turned 11:15. Want to keep things on schedule. We'll take a minute to introduce our speakers today for this next presentation of truck parking. Those of y'all probably know Jeremy Edgeworth. You should, if you don't, you should. You know, he's presented here before, but he works in our KYTC Central Office Division of Planning in the Modal Programs branch. He's the Freight, Rail, and Waterways Coordinator. I won't read the full blown summary for Jeremy, but he's been at KYTC for a while, and he's a great resource when it comes to freight. I actually bug him quite often with our ad program, and he's always quick to respond with some great information. So he's one of the speakers today, along with Jennifer Walton, who's the Associate Director at KTC. Jennifer Walton is a professional engineer with the Kentucky Transportation Center and has more than 20 years of experience in transportation-related research. She was named Associate Director in September of 2022 and is responsible for the Intelligent Transportation Systems, Traffic Safety, and Occupational Safety and Health Program areas. Prior to that, Jennifer was the Program Manager of the Intelligent Transportation Systems section, which conducts research on ITS planning and evaluation, traffic incident management, commercial vehicle, electronic screening, commercial vehicle information systems, data quality, and driver and vehicle licensing issues. Ms. Walton also serves as a principal investigator and trainer in her primary areas of expertise, traffic incident management, and the commercial vehicle innovative technology deployment program. Jennifer earned her BS and MS in civil engineering from the University of Kentucky. And speaking along with her will be Lynn Harper with Stantec. He's spoke at several of our SDP meetings, has done a lot of great studies. Lynn is a transportation engineer out of Stantec's Lexington, Kentucky office. He's been working with the Division of Planning for 18 years and is project manager for Stantec's statewide planning contract. Lynn enjoys a variety of projects come through the statewide planning contract, from small urban area studies to program study of KYTC dams. They gave him the opportunity to explore innovative solutions for KYTC. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to you all to do the presentation, and thanks for presenting.
Thanks, Nathan. So are you able to see my slides?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. So good morning. As Nathan says, we're going to talk about truck parking, the problem, and what Kentucky is doing about it. So some of the overviews today, I'm going to provide some context about the truck parking problem and what led to our 2022 statewide truck parking assessment and action plan. Len will then talk about some of the current efforts to expand rest areas to accommodate additional truck parking. And then Jennifer will provide an update on a research project to identify the best technology for counting trucks parked at rest areas, and conclude by sharing some of the unique technologies used at our weigh stations to weigh and inspect trucks. So to talk about our truck parking problem, unfortunately, scenes such as these are all too common nationally, and Kentucky is not immune. As you drive down our roads, especially in the evenings or early mornings, you'll find trucks lining the ramps and shoulders of our roads, rest areas, and weigh stations. They are also parked in rest areas and areas not designed for trucks, such as the passenger car areas of the rest areas. Often the parked trucks extend onto our mainline interstates and parkways, and this causes congestion on the ramps as well as safety hazards for the truck drivers and for the traveling public. In fact, back in December near our Woodford County rest area, we sadly had a fatality with a vehicle crashing into a truck parked along the interstate shoulder. Unfortunately, Kentucky buying acres of land and paving them for truck parking is not financially feasible. So for the study, we wanted to look at realistic low-cost options to address the truck parking demand using the resources the Transportation Cabinet already owns. So to start, we looked at our supply. The project team calculated that we had 820 marked truck parking spaces at rest areas, 413 at weigh stations. We also had 6,300 parking spaces at private truck stops and 170 other private spaces. This gives us a total of just over 7,700 truck parking spaces available in Kentucky. As expected, these are located mainly along our interstates, with a few along the parkways and other major highways. So to determine the demand side, the project team purchased truck probe data to see where they go and how long they're stopped. Demand was any truck parked longer than 10 hours. So on an average weekday night between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m., which is the peak time, there are approximately 9,000 trucks parked in Kentucky. With a supply of just over 7,700, this leaves on average 1,200 trucks without a place to park. So some may park at Walmart, Lowe's, or other big box stores, but overwhelmingly unofficial, unauthorized parking occurs mostly on our highway ramps and shoulders, especially near the rest areas. The parking on ramps and shoulders is a key safety concern. So on the map, the purple circles show where the truck parking demand outpaces the available supply, and the size of the circle is the magnitude of that shortage. So the project team identified 27 potential sites for truck parking and created conceptual designs of 3 design types. These were which existing facilities could be expanded to increase truck parking, which vacant facilities could be utilized for truck parking, and what excess right-of-way could be used for truck parking. These conceptual designs provided basic layouts and possible truck parking capacity. On the top right is the conceptual design for the Oldham County rest areas. The project team then took the top 16 conceptual designs and created 15% plans. These provided site layouts, pavement layouts in sections, lighting layouts, material quantities, and rough estimates. The image on the left is an example of the 15% plan that was done for the Boone County northbound rest area. The Boone County rest areas immediately moved into final design as they had a separate road plan appropriation. 1 year ago, cabinet leadership gave us the charge to complete the final designs and estimates for the most critical sites for inclusion in the road plan. The map shows in red stars the distribution of the 12 sites currently in the design process to expand truck parking. I will note the 2 blue stars along I-65 in Hardin County is a different project to relocate the weigh station further south from Elizabethtown, but the new designs include over 100 truck parking spaces. In Henderson County, there's a separate study to relocate the weigh station from US 41 to the new I-69 alignment, and efforts are being taken to increase truck parking at that new facility. So with the Hardin and Henderson County facilities included, we have 4 design firms, HDR, Palmer Engineering, Stantec, and QK4, engaged in expanding truck parking throughout Kentucky. So I'll now turn it over to Len Harper to talk about Stantec's role in the project and the 5 sites they're working on.
Thank you, Jeremy. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yep.
All right. So through our statewide planning contract, we were asked to complete survey and final design for 5 truck parking expansion areas. 2 of those are on I-75, 1 was on I-65, and 2 on I-71. The 2 I-75 sites were led to construction last month. And from a design standpoint, we were tasked with maximizing the number of safe truck parking spaces at these existing facilities. And to help expedite the schedule, we stayed inside existing right-of-way and minimized utility relocations as much as possible. Our design vehicle was a WV67 with a sleeper cab as shown in the top right. Thankfully, Clint Gooden is on here as well with me today from Stantec and will jump in if I misrepresent any of the design elements. And Jason Blackburn, please feel free to jump in as well. He is the KYTC project manager. Next slide, please. So our first site is the I-75 rest area in Georgetown by the Toyota manufacturing plant. Some of the beneficial aspects of this existing location include the restroom facilities and the existing truck parking pavement is in good condition. There are 37 truck parking spaces there today. Some challenges, we have pretty tight right-of-way and steep terrain on the back end of the site that we have to take into an account. The pink lines on this drawing show the new parking configuration. I know it's hard to see all the details, but adding parallel spaces on the ramps, expanding the parking area north, south, and east of the existing truck parking area, we were able to add 54 spaces, and that includes 2 ADA truck parking spaces and 1 oversized load space. Zooming in a little bit, this is one of our grading plan sheets, which were developed for each site. You can see how close our cut slopes get to the existing right-of-way line where we expand the parking area. We even had to construct a 13-foot retaining wall on the backside to stay within right of way, which increased our overall cost. As I mentioned earlier, this project was let to construction last month at a cost of $6.8 million, which was $1.8 million less than the engineer's estimate. Moving to Whitley County, this is our second site. It's the I-75 Welcome Center in Whitley County, just as you enter Kentucky from Tennessee. This location also has restroom facilities, and the existing truck parking pavement is in good condition as well. There are 31 spaces there today. The orange lines on this drawing show the new parking configuration. Here we were able to get 40 more spaces, including 2 ADA truck parking spaces and 1 oversized load space. As part of each plan set, we developed MOT plans. The construction areas on this plan sheet are shaded in the drawing. We wanted to maintain as much truck parking as possible during construction, so we staged it accordingly. You can actually see the auto turn movements we use to verify trucks can still get in and out of those truck parking spaces during construction. And we also had to maintain ADA compliance during construction, including access to sidewalks. In addition to the MOT plans and the grading plans, we also developed signing, lighting, and striping plans at each site. You can see the sign for the oversized load circled in red there, which is to be directed to the left with vehicles, and all other trucks are directed to the right. We also identified additional lighting that was needed. You can see those highlighted here. In this location, we just added Cobra head lighting. In other locations, we looked at high mast lighting. This project was also let to construction last month for a cost of $2.2 million. Which was $700,000 less than the engineer's estimate. At this point, before I jump to Simpson County, I'll open it up. Are there any questions about the 2 sites that have already gone to construction?
Lynn, just a note on the lighting is Scott County had a separate lighting plan that was done for it. It was a brand new lighting on the Whitley County. It was just augmenting the existing Cobra heads that were out there.
Thanks, Clint. Any others? All right. Hearing none, our third site is the I-65 Welcome Center in Simpson County. It's just as you enter Kentucky from Tennessee. Some of the benefits at this site, again, we've got existing restroom facilities. The truck parking pavement is in good condition. And we do have more right-of-way at this location than we did at the first 2 sites. One challenge, though, is coordinating with an ongoing sewer project at this location. So this is a plan sheet showing the proposed 8-inch sewer line that crosses the truck parking area and connects with a new pump station just north of the existing Welcome Center. Right now, the finance cabinet is paying around $10,000 per month to pump sewage out of the Welcome Center. So we wanted to coordinate with this project. Obviously, it's very important, but their project is lagging ours. So we're looking at our truck parking expansion, which should occur before this project actually goes to construction. One of the reasons that's important is you can see just north, I've highlighted the area in blue, so just north of the Welcome Center and the existing truck parking area, you can see that there's additional Kentucky right-of-way where that proposed pump station is going to go. And so when we first identified this site, we looked at that area as a lot of additional truck parking potential. But again, because we are going to be constructing our expansion areas first, we decided not to expand into that area at this time, just because some of the unknowns of the sewer project, and we don't want to have to rip up that new truck parking area with the sewer project. So taking that area out, our design plans for this location are still under development, but we were able to get 30 more spaces again, including 2 ADA truck parking spaces and 1 oversized load space. The preliminary cost for this location is $2 million. The last 2 sites are actually 2 abandoned rest area sites on I-71. This is a picture of the northbound I-71 site. And this is a picture of the southbound I-71 site. The main benefit of these locations, of course, is that KYTC does own the right-of-way, and it's already been graded. But some of the challenges are there's no restrooms. We do have steep terrain at this location. They both sit on a hill, and we'll need to replace the existing pavement at this location, which will increase the cost. The 2 Carroll County sites have not been surveyed yet, so these layouts are still preliminary. The proposed parking spaces are shown in yellow. We believe we can get 46 spaces, including 2 DA parking spaces at the northbound I-71 location. The purple lines on here, the layout, show potential vehicle parking and bathrooms, but that would have to be done by others. That's not part of this project. Our preliminary cost at this location is $5.5 million, and again, that does not include the restrooms or the vehicle parking shown in purple. For our southbound I-71 site, we believe we can get 55 spaces at this location, and the preliminary cost, not including the restrooms or the vehicle parking shown in purple, is $6.2 million at this location. And with that, I will pass it off to Jennifer.
All right. So in conjunction with the expansion of physical parking spaces, another piece is trying to make sure that that drivers are getting parking information, that we're getting that information out and that it's accurate. So the Kentucky Transportation Center has a project on that, and that's what I'm going to share with you today. Kentucky does have a current system at 13 locations that provides information on the truck parking. The technology that is rolled out there right now counts traffic as it comes in and out of those lots. And what we have found is, and I'll have a little bit of data on that in the next slide, but what we have found is those systems are not working as well as we'd like. But the data that we're getting from those systems is being checked at least once daily by the folks at Trimark and updated to try to ensure that we are sharing accurate information. But this was really one of the things that led us to this project was to improve the information that's being shared on available truck parking. So next slide, please. If you look at the 12 public sites, which is where we pulled data from, the accuracy was just right at about 60%, which is obviously not good enough. There's a lot of large variation, though, in the different sites. So some were performing in the 80s, while others were like 20 to 30%. So, but definitely issues with how the current technology is working. And overall, we were seeing over-reporting. So we were saying that more spaces were available than there actually were. And the reasons behind that were radar sensor obstruction. So often we have trucks parking everywhere in these lots, and then the radar sensors are obstructed. And then bad weather was also causing issues, or is also causing issues as well. So we're doing a pilot project, and we actually have just finished collecting the data on that pilot project, but it ran from May of 2025 to March of 2026. And we are basically, as part of that, looking at 3 different technologies and trying to determine for future implementation, which of these technologies would be preferred. by the Transportation Cabinet. A couple of things that were changed when we did this. I mentioned the current system counts traffic in and out of lots. We moved away from that, and that was at the direction of the Transportation Cabinet. So the new technology, all three of those that we tested looked at space by space. Is the space occupied or is it not? So that was a little different than what they're doing right now. And then the other thing that they asked that we focus on was marked spaces, which is what we're doing as well. Next slide. And just to give you a little bit of background, I help with Kentucky's Innovative Technology Deployment team and program. Doesn't sound like it necessarily by the name, but it is a commercial vehicle focused technology group. And back in 2018, that group had already identified that truck parking was an issue. So that group, one of the things we do for that group is help them with federal funding. We apply for federal funding for them. And so we received 2 high priority grants, which is how this pilot project is being conducted, and also how we plan to expand upon the current TPIM system with those federal grants. So the project I'm presenting on right now is one of those grants. And then once we conclude this project, and even now they're discussing how to roll out additional TPIM sites with the remaining federal grant that is there. Next slide. So we did the pilot at the Bullitt County Southbound Welcome Center. The red and blue that you see there are locations of some of the technology. I have removed reference to the vendors. We did have 3 different vendors that participated in 3 different technologies. I have one vendor who provided 2 different types of technologies. Our focus really, though, was not so much on the vendor themselves, but the technology and how it would perform. So I've removed any reference to the vendors in the presentation. Next slide. So one of the technologies we looked at was cameras with AI software. Again, we're looking at space by space occupancy and using artificial intelligence to analyze and improve the results. We have multiple cameras out there for this setup. One camera may have covered up to 15 spaces. Now, as I move through this, I will show you where at some point we decided to have the cameras look at fewer spaces instead of 15. And so I'll get to that as we look at some of the accuracy. But initially when we started, one camera was monitoring up to 15 spaces for the pilot. The cost per camera, sorry, can you back up for me? Thanks. The cost per camera, about $500 to $1,000 per camera. And we have 2 vendors who provide this solution. The next solution was a radar video combo. Again, space by space occupancy. One unit could cover up to 8 spaces, but for the pilot, and this was the vendor's choice, they decided to use one unit to cover 4 spaces. So we have, just one unit covering 4 spaces. We had 2 units as part of our pilot, so they monitored 8 spaces at this location. This cost is more expensive, over $6,000 per unit, and we had one vendor providing this solution. And the last one that we looked at was LiDAR. I have one vendor who provided 2 different LiDAR solutions. They chose one LiDAR unit for 6 spaces, and the cost was about $7,000 per unit. So getting into the results, what we found, and there's a lot of data here. So to try to give you a high level and quick summary of what you see there. At the bottom where you see vendor 1, camera 11, vendor 3, camera 12. These are in order. So the one on the far left, 91.24%, that is the highest performing technology, and that is the camera-based system using AI. When the cameras were used for 11 spaces. So that's 2 cameras monitoring 11 spaces perform the best. And then you see next to that, cameras monitoring 12 spaces performed next. And if you keep going down that line, you see the first 5 are all camera-based solutions. After that, you see the radar video that came in at 77% overall. And then eventually there toward the end, we see the LiDAR. So that's overall performance looking from that 11-month period. In terms of daylight, night, and nighttime, all of the systems dropped in performance at nighttime. And you see maybe some more significant drop off for some than others, but we do see drop off at night, which obviously is very unfortunate because that is the peak time for us to want to make sure that we have available parking, accurate available parking information. But again, you know, in terms of who's performing best at night, we still had that same technology, the camera 11 spaces, that was at over 88%, which was pretty good, and not much of a drop off for that particular technology and setup for nighttime performance. Next slide. We did have some precipitation data, and we did look at that as well. We did not see, as you can see, these bars are not, they're pretty level. We didn't see a huge change in performance with precipitation. Next slide. We also looked specifically at snowfall to see if it was impacted or if the performance was impacted. For that first top solution, again, not a lot of drop off at all. Some of the technologies, the radar video combo, you see a bigger drop off there for that particular technology when there was snow. Next slide, please. And then one last thing that we looked at was snow depth. So when there's snow on the ground, how was this impacting the technology performance? And again, not a huge drop off for almost all of the technologies. The one that you see a significant drop off though is for the radar video combo. So before I get into, I have a few slides on some other technologies, but basically in summary, the cameras with the AI technology, those are the ones that perform the best. They also are the cheaper solution. So we've provided this data. We are still summarizing a final report, but we are providing this data to the Transportation Cabinet so they can move forward with future installations. Are there any questions about any of the TPIMS project?
Yeah, I kind of have a question. I'm just curious, was the usage of something like a pressure sensor, such as like even like a tube counter or like a pressure mat, was that considered, or would that have even been practical?
So we talked about pucks or something in the pavement, and the our committee, which is Transportation Cabinet primarily, they did not want to go that route. So the technologies that ended up in the evaluation were reviewed and chosen by the Transportation Cabinet Committee. So we did talk about it. We did not include that as part of the evaluation. I think there was a lot of concern about the maintenance issues associated with those types of sensors.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. So I have a few extra slides, and if there's time, I will go ahead, and I think there is, but stop me if there isn't. I was asked to provide a few highlights on some of the technology that's used for commercial vehicle enforcement in the state. So I will do that if there's no objections. Maybe some of you are familiar with, but maybe you are not. It's first time hearing this. We have a system in Kentucky called Kentucky Automated Truck Screening. It's a camera-based and sensor-based system that is utilized with at weigh stations primarily. There are a few that are on other routes that are used to monitor commercial vehicle traffic. The primary purpose of those systems is to identify good trucks for inspection or good trucks to stop. We have thousands of trucks coming through our state every single day, and less than 1% of those are going to get inspected. So the technology is there to help us find the right trucks to stop and inspect. And they do a really good job of that. So basically primarily they're using data. So information about the safety history of that company, whether they've paid their taxes, whether they have all their registration up to date. Those are the things that we're looking at. We also do have some real-time safety data that we look at as well. But we utilize that information, and then trucks that potentially have an issue are flagged through that system and can be stopped for inspection. I will tell you that there are so many flagged with this that they cannot stop all of them, but that's what this system is used for. And it's a big help for commercial vehicle enforcement to find issues when they stop trucks. I wanted to throw this in so you could see the impact this technology has had. It is not that all of a sudden people aren't wearing their seatbelts, but it is that this was a very tough thing to identify without the technology. So in 2016, we were specifically looking here at the Laurel northbound weigh station. There were 2,697 inspections, 0 seatbelt violations. And again, it's not because they're not, all of a sudden not wearing their seatbelt, but it is because those violations were very difficult to identify back then. Now with this technology, as the truck comes into the facility, we get an image of that driver. So when they are stopped for an inspection, the inspector or the officer will go back to this camera system and verify, did they have a seatbelt on? And if they didn't, they will get a violation for that. They will also check to see if they're using a handheld cellular device. They also sometimes use this if their focus is seatbelts for that day. They will focus on the camera. There's no automated feature to this, so they have to actually look at the image to determine if they've got their seatbelt on or if they're using a handheld device, although that is something that we hope to incorporate in the near term. Next slide. This is another technology that I feel like has had to have a significant impact on crashes and lives saved. This tire pressure detection system is looking for a difference in the tire pressure in one of the tires or more on a truck. So in the example that you see there, you see a red tire. That tire has a different pressure than all the others, which is likely indicating a low tire or a flat tire. These systems work really well. We've deployed them to several of our weigh station facilities, and they are identifying a lot of these problems before the tire blows on the interstate and you have, potentially a real hazard on your hands. So next slide, please. Another system that we have just implemented is a park sign compliance system. We have a lot of issues with trucks not complying the park notification in the weigh station. So when we find issues with the truck, they will get a signal to park the truck for an inspection. And the ones that you want to park the most, those guys tend to keep rolling and not stop. So we've tried to, with the reduced amount of enforcement at these facilities who can chase down these trucks, we have tried to give them some technology that would help with this issue. So what we do with the current system is we document when they are violating these signs, we document that. If we do have an officer down the road, they can get this image and be able to stop the truck down the road. If they don't, the other thing that we want to do is flag this truck so the next time it comes into a facility, it will be noted that this truck did run previously. So giving us hopefully more opportunity to stop the truck, if not at that time, at a future time. And then I think this might be my last one here, but we also have thermal image cameras that are utilized at the facilities. They are looking for brakes that are inoperable and also flat tires as well. They can be used for both things. These are a little bit more, take a little bit more work to utilize, and it takes a little bit of experience to get good with these, but we have some inspectors and officers who have gotten very good with using these. You'll see in some of the images, I'll say the far right one where you see the bright light, and then on another tire, you don't see that. And that is evidence there that we have brake working on one and not working on another. So they've been trained on what to look for these, and they can the ones that are good with it can pinpoint them pretty easily. So these help them find primarily faulty brakes. Next slide. And I'm going to turn it back over to Jeremy. He's going to summarize.
So as an update on the status of our truck parking efforts, last week's announcement of the build grant that Mikhail talked about, awarded to KYTC, will increase truck parking at these 7 rest areas by 387 spaces. Each site will also have at least 2 ADA spaces for trucks, as well as 1 oversized overdimensional space. TPIMs that Jennifer talked about will be installed or upgraded at each site using the technology determined from their research. As Len noted, with the June letting, we'll begin construction soon on the Whitley northbound and Scott northbound sites that will add 94 truck parking spaces. We also just began the process with HDR to update our statewide truck parking assessment and action plan, or version 2.0. This will look at the next round of areas in need for increased truck parking, possibly I-24, I-69, or other parkways, as well as have more of a focus on urban truck parking issues and solutions. We are also just beginning a study with Stantec to specifically look at how we can effectively deter trucks from parking in unauthorized areas on our ramps and shoulders, creating those safety issues. This will look at what we're legally allowed to do, what have other states done, as well as assess our deterrent alternatives, whether it's signs, guardrails, curbings, etc. If you go to the last slide here, this has a link to our current statewide truck parking assessment and action plan, as well as information on the TPIM system currently that's run by Trimark on behalf of the cabinet. So with that, I will turn it over, and if there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions from folks? I'll ask one question. The truck parking facilities without the restrooms, how big of a challenge is that going to be? I assume you're going to have that partner, the finance cabinet, be on board to pay the cost for the restrooms and all that.
We do have to involve finance cabinet in that. The Boone County southbound facility will require either a additional restroom facility or a renovation of the current one to add additional capacity. So we've had to involve finance cabinet in that. And then for the 2 in Oldham County, or not Oldham County, in Carroll County that do not have facilities, we would have to involve finance cabinet in that as well, because we're talking about vertical construction.
Is that something they're generally on board with, or is that kind of hard for them to get on board with?
They seem fine with it in our current discussions with them. I mean, as long as they have a charge code and there's money allocated, they're ready to move forward. So they seem to be partners with us in this effort.
Cool. Any other questions? Everybody wants to go to lunch, Jeremy.
I get it. I understand.
With that being said, that concludes our STP meeting. We will see everybody in person in October at the central office. If you have afternoon meetings, coordinate with Jason for HDOs, and for MPOs, coordinate with Thomas. Again, see you all in October. Thank you for attending.
Thank you.